Hey everyone, I just wanted to make a little update video since the new content for the FF7 Rebirth demo came out. Just talk about the performance mode a little bit and some of my early impressions of the game just from the demo. Now, the big obvious question that everybody was asking is, did they fix the performance mode? No, they didn't. And I put up the Junon section of the demo. It still looks like a smeary mess that looks like it belongs on the Nintendo Switch and not a 40-inch plus 4K TV like these 7 remake games are clearly designed for. Now, the copium kind of came in and I thought, oh, maybe this is a mistake. Maybe they just added the update to the Nibelheim section and they forgot to add it to the Junon section. So I went back to the Nibelheim section and it still looks terrible. I guess it looks slightly better than it did before, but it doesn't look that great still. Now, thanks to Digital Foundry, we actually kind of have an idea of what's going on with this performance mode. In Digital Foundry's Embargo Day coverage of the video, they talk about how the upscaler used for the performance mode is really, really bad, and that the game is actually running at like 1152p or something as the base resolution. And that Digital Foundry video is for the release code of the game, so maybe there might be a day one patch that improves the way performance mode looks, but as it stands with the disc and the code on the disc, performance mode looks just as bad as the current demo. Now, I think everybody is in agreement that performance mode just is a disaster. It looks terrible. But for me in particular, I find it extremely disappointing in a couple of ways that I don't think the average 7 Rebirth player really particularly cares about. As someone like myself who only just got a PlayStation 5 and hasn't even gotten any current gen games on PC, I've just been kind of observing from a distance that game developers just seem really intent on destroying image quality at all costs, whether it includes incredibly demanding graphic settings that barely improve image quality and as a result cause game resolution to dip down back to Xbox 360 era levels of resolution, or using terrible upscaling methods to try to stretch all of these low resolution images back up to 4K. I was hoping that 7 Rebirth, given that it looked very much like Remake, that it wouldn't include any of this fancy nonsense, but apparently not. And the second reason bothers me personally as someone who video edits a lot, the performance mode looking as bad as it does basically makes it entirely unviable to make any sort of good-looking YouTube video. As some of you may or may not know, I previously made a video on the character combat mechanics on 7 Remake. And that video had a lot of footage from both the PC and the PS5 version of the game. I don't mind having to use a lower resolution than 4K for my images. I really care about what the source image looks like, so that way when it goes through all of those layers of video compression afterwards, that it's still going to end up looking good for you, the viewer, on that end. And since I strive to show games in the highest frame rate that YouTube can let me show in order to really show what you can do with the combat system, it basically makes it unviable for me to put in a YouTube video. Also, this performance mode may be the canary in the coal mine for any PC users if you're worried about any of this and are just waiting for the PC version. If Square Enix cannot do something as basic as not make the performance mode look like garbage and look like a Nintendo Switch game, what is that going to say about the eventual PC port? Because now, more than any time really in like the last 5 years, the stakes are super, super high in terms of getting the roll of a dice of either a good PC port or an extremely bad PC port. Given the worst PC port in the last couple of years, in my opinion, is The Last of Us Part 1, an i9 and AMD X3D CPU killer, and not using direct storage and is just straight up decompressing the assets on the CPU itself, thus killing your frame rate. And 7 Rebirth is being designed with the PlayStation 5 in mind. We could be inbound for another Last of Us Part 1 situation, potentially. So really, the only theoretical out to the current performance mode being so bad is a PS5 Pro. But that will require a PS5 Pro to exist, and B, Square Enix to be willing to invest time and resources into developing a patch and putting that out there. But that still doesn't take into account the performance mode would still be broken on the console the vast majority of people own. And you know what the worst part of all this is, outside of all the technical talk and PC fears and blah, 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 blah? 7 Rebirth's combat's really, really good, and I think you need 60 FPS, probably even more than you did Remake. And that segues into the actual gameplay, which I have very, very different opinions on, based entirely on the Nibelheim and Junon areas of the demo. Now, this is kind of the opposite of a combat comprehensive, whereas that is after hundreds of hours of playing a game. This is me playing for maybe like 6 or 7 hours. This is the exact polar opposite. Just things I observe, things I notice, etc., etc. I think the Junon portion of this demo is actually genuinely fantastic. There's a lot for both people who are casually playing 7 Remake to try out, to again jump into Rebirth, and for hardcore people who already were going to buy Rebirth to kind of incentivize them to talk about it, engage with the systems a little bit, and make them excited for the full experience. Now, the first thing that I noticed playing this Junon demo is how obscenely equipped everybody is. It's actually crazy to think that on the character ability side, it actually feels like this demo has you as strong and have as wide of a tool set as the end of Remake. Now, obviously, it's not factoring in stuff like materia, because once you factor that in, yeah, you don't have as much stuff. But you have 5 playable characters in the demo, each with 4 separate character-unique abilities. Plus, you have the synergy abilities, plus you have the aerial attacks and all of the different aerial variations of your abilities that can be performed in the air. Now, one thing that I have had to kind of relearn from this demo is my overall muscle memory for this game. It feels so similar to Remake, obviously being a sequel, but there's just enough differences that sort of my habits of my muscles and just like things I kind of intuitively do just get thrown off with all of these new combat systems. One thing that I loved to do in 7 Remake was just sit in guard until I needed to do something, so I would just do actions straight out of guard. But with the synergy skills, it's no longer really possible. So if I wanted to switch Cloud from, say, Operator mode or Punisher mode, that I would inadvertently trigger this synergy skill, and my muscle memory hasn't really quite adapted to that yet. Another similar thing I think about is Aerith's basic attacks. In Remake, you could just hold the button and she would just do all of her basic attacks. But now, holding the button instead does that little flurry thing that was her triangle in Remake. So I have to manually press for every swing that Aerith does. On the subject of abilities, I haven't had time to fully experiment with all of them. There was one ability that really caught my eye, and like I read the description in the menu, and my jaw was on the floor. The ability's bonus rounds, and when I first read it, I'm like, oh, there's no way they gave Barrett the ability to increase stagger percentage, which Tifa could only really do in the previous game, so okay, but that's not actually what it does at all. It just gives Barrett's basic attacks the ability to add stagger much more quickly, which wasn't as exciting, but still is a really cool function. Even in this limited slice of the game, I could already kind of tell that the direction that Rebirth is going in is that sort of hard line between basic attack, abilities, and limit breaks, and sort of their functionality, what they do, and kind of starting to blur a little bit. Although now that I think about it, there's just so many ways that you can stagger enemies in this demo that every block now comes with the sort of a parry function that increases stagger a ton on the enemy. So I'm kind of wondering what the end game of the game here really is going to look like. I'm wondering if stagger as a mechanic might end up being de-emphasized for maybe hard mode or even the end game, that just because you knock down an enemy doesn't necessarily mean that you won. Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith all feel kind of the same to me compared to Remake. There's nothing really that different with them, at least in this demo. Although, got the aerial aspect of Cloud and Tifa that you can actually utilize this time, which is fantastic change. The one character I still really can't particularly wrap my head around at the moment is Red 13. I'm trying to figure out sort of the rhythm and the flow and when to utilize his vengeance gauge and stuff. Because as far as I can tell, it seems like you can't get Red 13 into the air like you can Cloud and Tifa, which to me seems like an odd choice, but he does have an ability that does hit it pretty high up into the air, so maybe he doesn't necessarily need the ability to jump, but it's just hard when I'm trying to mess with all these party combinations, like how do I fit Red 13 in with everything else? I still don't know how to feel about synergy attacks after having played like 7 hours of this demo. One hand, I want to really like them because I think the moves are cool and flashy, and I love building up resources by using ATB and not having that weird Yuffie Sonon system from intermission anymore. But on the other hand, it kind of feels redundant compared to everything else in the combat system. It's not as moment-to-moment quick like abilities, but they're not like limit breaks either. Limit breaks are kind of a similarly long thing that takes to charge, and then you use it. And so synergy abilities just kind of seem like big attacks with a buff. I also have been able to seemingly trigger like background character assist by charging it a certain amount, but I haven't exactly figured out how you do that, or if it's just if you charge it a certain amount and then certain characters are knocked out, that a background character can help and step in. So I really gotta explore and mess with this stuff and learn a lot. That's it. My thoughts on the demo, whether it's first impressions or the performance mode overall. I am probably not gonna really make any videos on 7 Rebirth after this for a while. I want to try to beat this game as fast as possible to obviously avoid spoilers, but it also conveniently lines up that I'm starting a new job like a week and a half after Rebirth comes out. So I really do want to try to no life beat the entire game in a week and a half, first playthrough. So yeah, you're not going to be probably seeing that much from me for a while. So anyways, guys, that's it for the video. If you like this video, like it. Comment down below your experience with the 7 Rebirth demo. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Subscribe if you want to see more future coverage on 7 Rebirth. Once I do finally beat the game and I actually have time to explore some of these more minor and obscure systems. And that's it for the video. So have a good day.